Okay, my friends, it's Brad Scarface here. Today we're gonna be doing a little bit of a pizza tutorial. I got some shit in my bowl, I don't know why, but anyways, you're gonna need a bowl. Like a pretty big fucking bowl. Don't use a small bowl because you're gonna make a mess. There's gonna be shit all over the place. You don't want that. You don't want that. You want a nice bowl, nice big round bowl. If it's metal, it's more preferable. Okay. So first thing, I'm gonna be doing it's gonna be like a portion for maybe 2 pizzas. It's gonna be one cup. Okay, so over here I got a 1 cup of water. We're just gonna pour it in here. Make sure it's room temperature, a little bit warmer. You want it to be more warmer than more colder. You get this done here. You get this going. Now you're gonna need, very important, okay, is active dry yeast. There's all kinds of varieties and all this shit, but just make sure you get some yeast because it's not gonna work without it. You need it. I like to give it a little smell. Make sure it's got a smell thing going. And we're just gonna pour it a little bit there. You don't need to measure it. There's so many cooking channels. It's always you're gonna be super precise. All this shit. No, be a fucking man. Just eyeball it. You know your shit. So normally what people do is they put a little bit of sugar for the the yeast to eat and shit. I like to use something different. I like to either use honey or some malt. Here you got a little variety here. If you're gonna be using something sweet, something sugary, something more sweeter than that is gonna be doing wonders. Okay, so you want to use honey because honey is more natural. It's more in the nature, and sugar is more refined. You don't know where it comes from. You want something more natural, like a honey. So we're going to be using both the honey and the barley malt. The barley malt. Just going to pour a little bit in here. We're going to take a little spoonful here. Very goopy, but this is going to go great. It's going to add a lot of flavor, a lot of depth. That's why you want to use something different other than sugar. Because sugar is bland, it's just sugar. If you got honey and malt, it's all kind of different flavors in here. So we're going to put that in here, just a little bit. Not too much because we already got a little bit of honey. We don't want it to be too sweet, you know what I mean? I'm going to take this, we're going to mix it up here. Make sure that yeast is, doing its thing. We're going to put it back in the fridge here. I'm just gonna let it sit here for a little bit and then we'll get going again. Okay, so I let it sit here for a few minutes and it's starting to do the little bubbles and shit. You gotta make sure you test out the yeast before you actually prepare the flour and the bread and the dough because you gotta make sure this shit's alive. We're dealing with bacteria and shit. You gotta make sure that it's working. If it's not working, it's not doing its job, then you're gonna have problems. It's just your dough is not gonna rise. It's gonna look like shit. It's not gonna be a pizza. Okay, so I'm gonna put this away. And what we're gonna do here, I'm gonna get my flour out. Now normally you're supposed to get bread flour. Make sure you get a high gluten, the protein shit in your flour. But I went to the grocery store today. This is the only thing they got. It didn't say all purpose. It just says flour on it. So I don't know what it is. I didn't feel like waiting in line at the other grocery store because quarantine and shit. You gotta wait half hour before you go to the grocery store. It's a pain in the ass. So don't do what I'm doing. I'm a lazy piece of shit, but it's gonna work anyway. So now we're gonna start here. We're gonna start off with 1 cup here. Break up the little chunks in there. Make sure you got some nice flour. We're just going to ease that in. You can kind of experiment in this part of the deal here, figuring out what amount of flour works for you, because it's different for, every person. But ideally you want more of a wetter dough, because the wetter the dough is, the more crispier and crunchier it is in the oven. Apparently, that's what they say anyway. So we're just going to mix this up here. You know, you want to really get into it, you know. Become one with the dough. All that shit. Now that it's a little bit mixed in together, you know, make sure you get some dough pieces off your fingers. It's going to be real sticky and all that shit. And you're going to put in a little bit of salt. Okay, I'm using, you know, kosher salt, whatever, it doesn't make a difference. And then this is another thing that, you know, depends on what kind of person you are, but I like to put a little olive oil in there. You know, some fucking Italian purists think you should do it after you cook the actual pizza. It's not part of the dough making process, but like, fuck it, you know. I'll do what I want. No one's the boss of me, you know. I control my destiny. And also when you're working with olive oil, it makes the dough a lot smoother, so it doesn't stick to your fingers as much. It makes it a lot easier to knead the dough. You know, there's some purists here that like to put it onto the, you know, the table, and they like to fuck around with it that way. You know, just do it in your hands like this. It doesn't really matter what you do. You want to make sure you do this for like 10 minutes. Okay, it's a long time, but like, you'll get through it. It doesn't matter. You can add flour here and there, you know, to make it a little easier, a little less sticky, but it's gonna be sticky whether you like it or not. So you're gonna have to get used to that. Okay, so now that you're finished, you know, take a look at the ball. Make sure it's nice and even. Make sure it's nice and smooth, you know. Not too sticky, but, you know, there's still a little bit of stickiness when you start playing around with it, you know. And this is when you're gonna, you know, fold it into a little ball. You know, I thought this was going to be enough for 2 people or 2 portions, but this is good enough as it is. It's just one, like, little pizza ball here. Get yourself one of these fucking things, you know, like the little Tupperware containers. What you're going to do here, you're going to take a little bit of olive oil, put that in there, right in there. You know, make sure you got a decent amount, you know, you don't have to go crazy. Take your little pizza ball here. You know, make sure it's nice and smooth and all that crap. You take it, put it in here. You make sure to cover the ball in the oil. And just sit it down in the center. Make sure it's got all the sides and shit. You know, you're rubbing it all around here. Make sure it's nice and smoothly covered. You put the lid on. Very important step. Making sure this shit is sealed up. So you put it in the fridge. Shove some shit in the back. If you don't have any room, just fucking put it in there. It's in a Tupperware, so it doesn't really matter what you do with it. Just make sure it's in the fridge. You keep it in there. I like to go like at least 48 hours. You can go up to a week. You know, it's pretty good that way. The longer you let it sit, the more flavors and shit pop out. So you gotta make sure you gotta do that, you know. So now we're gonna start working on a tomato sauce. This I like to make it advanced too. You let it sit in the fridge for a couple days. It makes it nice. It sets in the flavors and all that shit. What I'm gonna be using, here I got some Pastene, some Italian tomatoes. Make sure they're Italian, because that's whatever, you know, because Italians like to be Italian. They don't like to do anything else from outside of the country. So you make sure you use Italian tomatoes and shit. So I got a nice bowl. A little bit smaller than the last one, but this one's working pretty good here. So open this. Oh, you fuck. Make sure you get a can opener just in case the fucking thing pops off, which I always have. Very good thing to have, very convenient. Okay, so we got this here. These are full tomatoes. Okay, so this is gonna be a little bit tricky here because you're gonna have to smash up the tomatoes here, but I like it a little bit chunky, so that's why I don't get the puree, because I like having a little bit of chunky in the tomato sauce, you know. Nice, makes it feel more alive and all that shit. So we're gonna take this, just mash up the tomatoes in here. The hardest part is the edges of the tomato. Those are the hardest to squeeze. It's pretty easy though when it's in a can. It's all kind of, you know, all kind of torn apart anyway. Doesn't really matter. You know, you don't need to put any sugar. Don't put sugar in this shit. You don't need it, because we're gonna be putting tomato paste. You know, this shit. You know, we're going to be using quite a bit of this stuff, so I don't know with the can, I just kind of eyeball it. Just like, you know, you don't have to be too precise. It's really about your preferences. Some people like a runny tomato sauce. I like it kind of thick, you know. Fuck, I just spilled it on my fucking shirt. Now that we got that done, some recipes say put olive oil in the sauce. I disagree because we're going to be putting this in the fridge. So like, you know, when you put olive oil in the fridge, it's going to start to separate from the sauce. It's going to solidify. It's not going to look good. Put a little salt in here. And then this is where it comes down to preference. So I'm going to go a little bit controversial here. I'm going to put a little bit of paprika. Just a touch to give it some flavor and some scent, you know. So mix that up in there. Then we're going to get some classic oregano. Always use a lot of it because you never can use too much oregano, you know what I mean? But even more, you know, fuck it, you know. Here's another thing. I'm using freeze-dried garlic. Some people don't like to use garlic, but fuck them, you know. Just put that in here, you know. Oh fuck, I put too much. But you can't use too much garlic. I put a fuck ton. Look at that shit. Look how much garlic that is. It's a lot of shit, man. We're gonna add some crushed red pepper. This is definitely gonna be pissing people off. I don't give a fuck. You know, just some cayenne pepper seeds and shit. We're gonna put that in there. Give it a little bit of a kick over sauces and all that shit. Very good thing to have. So we're just gonna put our sauce in here. And since we put the chili spices and all that stuff, it's gonna last a little bit longer than a normal tomato sauce would, especially when you got garlic. You know, that's gonna help keep away the bacteria, keep away the mold, all that stuff. You know, it's a good way to preserve stuff if you want to. The only thing I'm really missing here is some onions, but you know, I don't have any, so fuck it, we're not going to use a sauce. You know, put the lid on, make sure it's nice and tight, and we're going to put this in the fridge. And then we're going to wait, you know, about 48 hours, and then we're going to cook the fuck out of this thing. Okay guys, so like I just waited, you know, about 48 hours to like, you know, make sure the dough is all set, and you can see it here. I had to transfer it into another fucking box here, because look how fucking big that is, bro. Like you saw when I started, it was like a little ball here. I put it in. Look how big it is. This is why it's important to like make it sit in the fridge like very longer, so that way it looks, you know, it gets big like this. So we're not going to use the whole thing because I don't have enough, you know, space in the oven, and I don't have a big tray for this. But you know, to start off here, what we're going to do, just going to take a little bit of flour here, put it on our cutting board. You know what, fuck it, maybe we'll just use the whole thing. We'll see what happens. I think we got enough room here anyway. It's a lot of air in here. I'm going to try to make sure that I don't, you know, pop out all the air in this. Just spread it apart evenly. Get it a nice, simple crust. So I'm just pushing it out here, pushing out the corners and all that. You know, I don't like a crust that's too thin. I like a little bit of meat on my crust, you know what I mean? This is the thing that I'm going to do differently. This is more of a traditional way of doing like a New York style pizza. I'm going to start off with a little bit of a layer of Reggiano Parmigianna. And normally what they do is these people, they put the sauce on the bottom and the cheese on top. We're putting the cheese on the bottom and put the sauce on top of the cheese. So that's what we're doing. Now we got some, you know, special brand Saputo full milk mozzarella. Make sure you get the full milk, whole milk, or you get pizza mozzarella. It's easier that way. You know, pizza mozzarella, obviously for pizza. You know, you want that thick, nice, you know, fatty cheese. It's going to melt real nice in the oven. So we're going to use that. We're going to put that on top here. Then we're going to take our sauce that's been sitting in the fridge also for 2 days. Use a wooden spoon. That's pretty crucial. We're just going to put this on top here. It's a little chunky, so, you know, it's going to be not too perfect here. Anchovies. Get yourself a little fork here. And just put, you know, little dabs here and there. You don't have to use anchovies if you don't like that, but I love anchovies, so that's why we're doing this. We're going to take some breadcrumbs, and we're just going to pour this on our tray here because I don't have one of those fancy spatulas, and this is what we're going to use to make sure that we can throw the pizza onto the oven. So I preheated at the maximum temperature, 550 degrees Fahrenheit. We got this here. We make sure there's a tray inside the oven. We preheated it for like 20 minutes beforehand. So this is going to slide in and cook real nice, and we're going to leave that in there for maybe like 10 minutes. Okay guys, it's been about 10 minutes. So we're just going to take this out real nice here. We'll see how it looks. Ooh, ooh. It's a big boy. Okay, so it kind of messed up a little bit here. It's a little bit too thin towards the middle part. But you know what? Still looking pretty damn good, I have to say. Take a look at that. Nice browning, nice, lot of bubbles here, a lot of air bubbles in here. Just the center part is a little bit wet here. As you can see, I've made it a little bit too thin towards the middle. Not a good look, but what can you do, right? So, here we go. We're just going to do a little bit of fixing up here. We're going to let this cool for a bit, and then we'll do a taste test to see if it's actually good or not. Okay, so here's the final pizza. As you can see, looking pretty damn good. I think I need to work out a few things though first, but we're just going to cut into that. You can just hear that crunch there. It's really, really nice. Really fluffy, crispy dough. Really satisfied with the dough. I just didn't put it together properly, I would say, towards the end there. You know, rolling the dough out, making sure the pizza looks perfect is a whole other art that can take a lifetime to master. But this dough is looking pretty damn sick. So I don't even care. Okay, so we cut this up here. I'm going to let it cool down a little bit longer. There's a lot of sauce condensed right in the middle here. Okay guys, so I'm just doing a little taste test to see how this pizza holds up here. You can take a look here. You know, it's just looking real good. The dough altogether, the way I rolled it was not perfect, but the dough itself is so good that it's not even an issue. That's so good. This is definitely the best pizza I've definitely made, but one of the best I've ever had in my life. Holy shit. All right. I'm going to leave it at that. Enjoy my pizza, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.